Well, good evening. Welcome to Come Together for our April Come Together. I hope that everyone is having an enjoyable day. And we are so excited to see everyone once again. I am Pastor Kelly Chapman. We have Sumner and Lana and Jen, Rachel, and our team for this evening. So it's just an honor, and we're so blessed to have Leon Dixon as our reflection leader this evening. And I invite you as we gather and we center ourselves in this evening of come together, that you might share where you are coming from, and as we give greetings to one another. This again, so thankful for this time. Each month we gather. Hello, Janet and Ansonetta. So wonderful to see you again. Andrew and Nadine, for all of those who, as we gather and we center ourselves. And I know that there's a bit of rain in Minnesota, and just testing the tornado sirens, but thankfully no tornadoes. Good evening, Becky and Ann, Eileen. Feel free to share where you're coming from. I happen to be here in Memphis, Tennessee this evening, and so thankful for the opportunity to join with everyone. Hello, John and Julian, Jen. Welcome, everyone. Doris, and come together. And so fortunate to have our reflection leader this evening, Leon Dixon, Executive Director for Redeemer Center for Life. Hello, Kirsten and Carl. It's so wonderful to be gathering in community in a time when we celebrate welcome, safety, and belonging, centering ourselves in this time of reflection and moving into the breakout conversations that we'll have, where even go deeper in relationship and conversation with one another. Again, welcome everyone for our together for this month of April. And one of the things we hope that with this April come together will be the kind of the prelude to real spring weather that will follow some of the rain, as we also remember those who may be suffering from flooding at this time. So, but again, thankful to be together. Welcome, Richard and Shelby and Phyllis, Randy. Just so wonderful to see everyone again. Paul, Margaret, welcome to our come together. And I will be your host. And my name is Pastor Kelly Chapman, and our conversation partner this evening is Leon Dixon. And we're so thankful to have Leon with us again this evening. And our come together process is, again, we begin with this time of welcoming as we enter into this space, this time together, again, centering on welcome, safety, and belonging. And we're centering ourselves. We will move into a land acknowledgement, and that will be followed by a time of reflection. And then following our reflection time will be the connecting time, where really it's this kind of a building movement in this evening, and the process is moving from welcome, the centering, the reflection that we will share with Leon, but then breaking into the breakout groups, and that centering time in small group, where we really listen to one another with that deep sense of listening that we all so often long for. And it's a blessing that we get to share that time with one another. So that's really the crescendo of our come together time, is the breakout in the small group. And then, of course, we will conclude with our sending at 8:30. So again, welcome. So wonderful to have you with us. And we enter into our centering with a land acknowledgement that as we gather tonight, they're asking the question, how do we build true relationships across difference? And we acknowledge the sacred land on which we stand. So the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement is located on the ancestral homeland of the Dakota people. We are in close proximity to the territories of the Anishinaabe and Ho-Chunk peoples. So that this land has been stewarded as a living relative by the Dakota for generations. The United States government effectively stole this land from the Dakota people through a series of unjust treaties and broken promises, followed by targeted efforts of genocide, ethnic cleansing, and forced removal. And for this, we repent and we commit to doing better. So we look now to the Dakota people and all Native American communities as examples of resilience, resistance, and strength. We're grateful to have the opportunity to learn and to work in this community and on this territory, so that as we enter into conversations of racial justice tonight, let us remain mindful of those broken promises and treaties and trust in all relationships. As I had shared earlier, I am in Memphis, Tennessee this evening, and I had the opportunity to visit the Lorraine Hotel where Martin Luther King was assassinated more than 50 years ago. And as we center ourselves on racial justice and a beloved community, that aspiration, the dream that Martin Luther King not only dreamed for, but gave his life for. And Martin Luther King and so many others in a movement that really is about a vision of a United States, a community, a lives where every life is cherished. And so as we center ourselves, I invite you to just these couple of pictures to center ourselves and think about that space, that time in history, that commitment, not only as an aspiration or a dream of Martin Luther King, but a dream and an aspiration and a dedication that we carry with us today as a community and as we come together. So I invite you to reflect on your own life, on your own activities, on your own neighborhood, on your own church, your synagogue, your mosque, and the work and the ways that we commit ourselves to beloved community as welcome, safety, and belonging. Tonight, we share as we center ourselves the mission statement of Redeemer Center for Life and the core beliefs and commitments. A Redeemer Center for Life was started by Redeemer Lutheran Church. It's a nonprofit in the Harrison neighborhood. And it shares this belief and commitment that we believe the Holy Spirit, who is the Lord and giver of life, is upon us. And we commit ourselves to being in proximity with those who are suffering, neglected, and marginalized. And we will work to acknowledge, promote, and support the dignity of every human being in every stage of life. So we commit to listen, respond, and work to support the needs of youth and young adults, specifically those residing in the Harrison community of North Minneapolis. So then most of all, we commit to walk humbly with our God, acknowledging that we are not here to save, teach, or fix any individual or community. Rather, we will serve, working side by side, and hopefully we will learn together, making our community better each and every day. That is the Redeemer Center for Life core beliefs and commitments. Again, I am Pastor Kelly Chapman, Director for the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement, and I have the deep honor to again introduce to you our conversation partner, Leon Dixon, Executive Director for Redeemer Center for Life, child of God, and amazing leader. So Leon, welcome. Great to see you again, and thank you for being our conversation partner this evening.
Well, thank you for inviting me again. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and be present with everyone.
Yeah. Well, Leon, I want to maybe begin by a question. What is it? What brought you to Minneapolis?
Honestly, it was everything around the George Floyd incident. So I was in Maryland. I was the first Black vice president, chief diversity officer at a university in Maryland. And my president came to me and said there was a unique opportunity in Minnesota if you're up for it. I had never really thought about coming to Minnesota, but I also realized doing the work I've been doing for the past 30 years, which is centered around what we now call DEI work, but my approach has always been through human dignity, but be that as it may, I said, you know, this is ground zero for the work I do. I need to be there. So this opportunity came up, my president vouched for me, and I came to Minnesota and actually was at St. Mary's University as a vice president. The first and only African-American vice president the schools had to this day. So that's what brought me here, because I wanted to be, like we said in our missions, you know, in our core beliefs, proximate. This is the work I've done. This is what I believe in, and I felt as though I needed to be here. I came here, and I'm pleased with it, you know. And then a friend of mine showed me a posting about an opportunity in Minneapolis, because I was in Winona at the time. And I was like, well, that'll get me even closer. And I came up and visited, and the neighborhood around Redeemer Center for Life reminded me of home. I'm from Detroit, and it doesn't look identical. We don't have as many craftsman style homes, but the feel of the neighborhood, it reminded me of home. And so I said, you know, this must be something that's meant to be. Went back, prayed on it, talked to my daughters about it. And I came, you know.
Yeah.
I'm here. Aside from the snow, it's been a great move too.
Leon, one of the things I appreciate so much is how positive you are. But it's not like life is always a cupcake, right, or a cakewalk, right? Mm-hmm. And you've shared with us some of your story from Winona. And I would really appreciate if you could share some of that, because there are things that you've experienced that people don't really believe happen to nice, positive people.
So I moved to Winona in May of 2021. I moved downtown. So upon my arrival, they did a big spread in the newspaper, in the local newspaper, you know, welcoming me to town. I moved in a brand new apartment building. They built I guess for Winona, it would be luxury apartments. Everywhere else would be, you know, apartments, but it was luxury apartments in Winona. And I'm walking across the street to go to a little sandwich shop, place they had called Herbert and Gerbert's. I'm not from this area, so I'd never heard of them, but it was closed and it was right by, and I was waiting on the movers to bring my things. So I'm in slacks and a blazer, and I'm walking across the street, and Winona County Police pull around and stop. And the guy legitimately told me, I don't know who you are. You need to identify yourself. And I said, okay. He pulls the Ford Explorer up on the curb. So the tail of the Explorer is blocking traffic and the front two wheels are blocking me. And I'm like, well, I don't understand what you stopped me for, but I did because I'm too old to be arguing with people. I gave him my license, and he continued to tell me how I need to be still, or he's gonna have to cuff me. One thing leads to another, and he tells me there's a be on the lookout for somebody matching my description from a quick trip holdup. So I asked him, I said, in all honesty, can I see this be on the lookout? Because I find it hard to believe a 6'4", 50-something-year-old black man in a blazer and slacks just robbed a quick trip and decided to take a leisurely walk through downtown Winona. And he proceeded to call for backup. One thing leads to another. One woman who was a pedestrian, another woman who was driving was like, why don't you just leave the guy alone? And funny part, the lady who was a pedestrian was like, oh my gosh, don't you know who that is? That's the new vice president of St. Mary's. They had him in the newspaper, dummy, and blah, blah, blah. You know, and he listened to her, even though I was trying to explain who I am and I wasn't doing anything wrong, but he listened to her and was like, oh, well, why didn't you tell me you were the vice president? You know, so I made mention of that. You know, I'm gonna go a little bit further with this, Pastor, if it's okay. So I made mention of it at our opening ceremony for our faculty. We had an opening faculty meeting. So I talked about this experience because we were having a kind of a discussion of sorts because some of our faculty were mad that our president gave a book to read from Ta-Nehisi Coates. And in one of the chapters, he talks about his experience with police, and they were saying it was anti-police. So I said, okay, well, let's throw that out and let's talk about something that I know is real. And we talked about my experience. So I talked about this around 12:30 p.m., 1 o'clock p.m. The session was over at 1:15. I walked back to my office by 1:25, and the police chief and the sheriff from Winona were both sitting in my office and decided to tell me how I was blowing this out of proportion and I have to be lying. And I explained to him, I even described the vehicle and everything the officer was wearing that day. And the police chief said, oh, that was one of my guys. Oh, I know who you're talking about. He's just passionate. He didn't mean any harm. He was just passionate. It wasn't racist. I said, one man's passion is another man's murder. And I said, and even though you might think it's going that far, I said, recent experience even tells us that. So he committed to having an ongoing conversation with me. So for the next 2 years, I only saw him one time, and that was when I joined the Human Rights Commission, and he was an automatic appointee to the committee. And then he stopped coming and started sending the designee to that meeting. The other thing about Winona, so my daughter, she's 21 now. She was 19, 20, going on 20 at this time. Got a store at the Target. So she's doing the little DoorDash, the Instacart kind of delivery. She packs it up and takes it to your car. So I already had students working there who had complained about their experience. So one night, a lady just decides to start screaming because my daughter reaches past her, behind her, to get something off the shelf. And I know my daughter, I'm not making this up, and I even told her to pull the table. I'm sure she said, excuse me. But again, she's wearing a Target shirt. She's pushing a Target cart. She's got the little Target scanner thing. This lady hollers, she's trying to rob me, and then throws herself in the cart into the canned goods. Target security, knowing my daughter works there, apprehended her and called Winona police. So my daughter calls me first. So I show up and I'm trying to get to the bottom of things, you know, as much as I can without causing a scene, but at the same time, trying to make sure my child is okay. And I'm like, did anybody think to pull a videotape? I mean, that would be the easiest thing. And I'm looking, I'm like, there's 5 cameras in this aisle alone. Nobody thought of it. So they wanted to proceed to tell me how I was out of order and they were going to cuff me too. I said, okay, that's fine. I stepped back, I got on the cell phone, I called counsel from my university, and they came out because she lived about maybe 6 blocks away. She drove over and like, what's going on? And she was like, the security was saying, you know, what, and the police were saying, what's it have to do with you? And she was like, this is one of the vice presidents at my school. And what happened again? Oh my God, why didn't you say that? Shouldn't have to. At that point, counsel asked if they could review the tape just to see what happened. They looked at the tape. So my daughter was like maybe 4 feet away from the lady. And that my daughter never said, touched, or did anything. Said, and they pulled the same videos about 35, 40 minutes later and saw that I wasn't disrupting because they told me I was obstructing the execution of justice, obstructing justice, some other word they put in there. and impeding an official investigation. So immediately I got another email from the police chief. He didn't come to my office this time, but I'm sorry you had to go through that. You ought to just tell people who you are sometime, and that would alleviate all of this. Get to work 2 days later, and I have 2 students who come to me saying, Mr. Dixon, what can we do? We work at Target. I'm like, oh, I already know something crazy is about to be said. And sure enough, 2 more patrons of the store started yelling, build a wall around Target, because these were 2 Latino women and they were working there. And the citizens of Winona decided it was cool to chant, build a wall. And they're like, we should have built a wall around Target. So my students were like, they not only do they not want to go to work, they're afraid to go into the community. Now, I'm not saying everybody was like that, but what that did for me was inspire me to join the Human Rights Commission, because I get tired of people fussing about stuff and not doing anything. So I said, I got to hold myself to the same standard. So I joined the Human Rights Commission. And then I got appointed to the, oh, wow, I just went through my head, the Chamber of Commerce. And it makes me laugh because all of a sudden everybody wants to be involved and they want to do the right thing. But these same people, 2 of whom were in the Chamber of Commerce, nobody ever said, hey, you guys might want to think about things or do something different. So what happens, one of them resigns the minute I get on, and the other one stops coming to meetings. So at a certain point, I always say, I join these things because, one, accountability means a whole lot of different things to everybody. So we've taken words nowadays and started changing them to, fit and serve whatever agenda we have a lot of times. I mean, everybody's guilty of it now. Post-pandemic, we really started taking a lot of liberties that we didn't before. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just what it is. But at a certain place, if we don't start trying to find a way to build bridges, and I know that sounds like the easy way out, but like I said before, we've been for 50 years doing this. And we really haven't made much progress. So what harm would it try, in doing a different approach? So that's where I think human dignity comes into play in a more meaningful way. And I know a lot of people say, oh, that just sounds like a workaround to having these critical conversations. To me, it's not a workaround. This is the only way, because if we don't start recognizing the humanity and the true dignity that was embodied in us, through birth, we're already lost. If we can't come to a common ground that as human beings, we are afforded certain liberties and we should have certain things afforded to us. We'll never agree on anything else. But what that looks like in everyday play and application is something totally different. And it does require people to do a little bit more than they need to do in order to build bridges. But like you said, Pastor, that's one of my faults. I stay positive and I still believe in people, and I still have hope that people at their worst moment will default to love as opposed to hate. And I know we see examples where they don't, but I still hold hope that can be something that does exist.
So Leon, as I listen to you, it's like you have these encounters that are unfair, unjust, and each of those encounters, you're the one that's taken the higher ground. It's like, what is it that sustains you? When you're the one who's offended, and you wind up being the one who's
it's a combination of things. So one, as I shared before, I'm an infantry soldier, so I don't know how to quit, and I don't really take no for an answer on a lot of things. But being an infantry soldier also means I'm a little strong-willed. I'll put it that way, to put it nicely. My belief in God, as I've gotten older and the experiences I've had both through the military and outside of the military, sometimes you have to be the one, I'm not putting myself in that holy ground with anybody, but, Jesus gave us an example of what true sacrifice looks like. And if I'm not willing to give a little bit of me in sacrifice, then I shouldn't be doing anything in the public eye anyway. And then my mom and dad, I'm lucky. Somebody told me one time in Maryland I was the unicorn because my parents have been married for 60 years and they're still together. My parents always told me at a certain point, you're going to have to do something that you ain't going to like. And those are my dad's exact words. You're going to have to do something you ain't going to like sometime. He said, and part of, living this life is you're going to get heartburn. He said, but after the heartburn comes relief. He always used to sing this Rolaids commercial. We were little, but it stuck with me because I have had a lot of heartburning situations. And as a veteran coming back from overseas, I really for a while was like, I cannot believe this, because I'm one of those veterans that wear my hat, not for people to know that I'm a veteran so much, but for other veterans to see me and we can find our own community. But I do think certain things should be afforded when people are willing to make a sacrifice. So in order to get certain things, you got to give up some things. And unfortunately, I guess for me, but for the greater good, I think my approach, and it works for me, I don't recommend it to anybody else, but for me, I just can't sit back idly and complain without trying to do something. It might not always work. It might not even be the best thing. I don't know, but as long as I'm erring on the side and I stay prayerful, I think I'm doing the right thing. I at least want, to try before I give up.
Yeah. Well, how long have you been in Minneapolis? And the question I want to ask you is like, what has surprised you since you've been in Minneapolis?
So I've only been here since December 22nd. I moved here in the middle of the ice storm. I drove up the Mississippi River Pass there, whatever they call that little route, the Black and Gold Trail, whatever. But I drive up here in the middle of an ice storm. And I said, that should have just set the tone for me because since I've been here, it's been like blizzard after blizzard after blizzard. And my imaginations of what Minnesota would be like and the reality are two different things. So I just knew they would have snow plowing down to like an art. It'd be beautiful. They plow little special mountain passes. And I've been driving in 2-foot deep valleys and ridges since January. So yeah, that's been part of the experience. So the one thing that really surprises me about Minneapolis, and again, it might be because I don't have enough experience here yet, people are trying to do so much good, but they're purposely siloing themselves. I don't know if it's, well, I'm not going to say purposely, but I find people are siloed off. And a lot of times they're doing similar work and the end goal that they're after is the same, but it's kind of like, let me do my thing. I don't want to trust anybody. And I'm not saying that's across the board, but that's been the one thing that surprised me because as an outsider looking in before I even moved here, and I would listen to the news at the end of the days, and they gave you the weekly, the daily update of how things were bad for the police in Minneapolis, but all you saw were community members together. I have a friend who runs an organization on the South Side, and in her neighborhood, I saw so many positive things. So I imagined, the whole city was going to be like Powderhorn Park, and it's not, especially on the north side. And, I'm speaking as somebody who's new here, so maybe I haven't made the right connection yet. A lot of people want to talk to you, but not truly partner, if you know what I mean. But I don't quit. I keep going. I got one partner who I can count on, and that's Pastor Jen. So I've been leaning on her a little more heavily than I should, so probably. But I do think there's a place for both Redeemers to exist and thrive. So, and she's new too. Oh, and she's on here. Hey, Pastor Jen. But it's a place for us to thrive, and we're both new here. So I think that puts us at a place of an advantage because we don't have any dogs in the race, so to speak, on all of the historical things that have gone on. And again, as a real outsider coming into the community, gives me an opportunity to really take a look at the landscape and see where do I want to jump in at and where don't I. But yeah, the other thing I've been pleasantly surprised about, though, at the same time, is the openness of people in the community. they will tell you what's on their mind in no short terms. And maybe a younger me might have been offended, but I'm at a place now. I'm glad to hear it because they're telling me what work needs to be done. You know, it's a lady in one of our buildings who almost daily tells me what to do. And you know, I kind of joke when she calls, like, "Uh-oh, what's on my list for today?" And she laughs and she's like, "No, but I get it. You have needs. I'm here to serve. Let's see what we can do together." Her list is getting longer by the day, but it's still a list and it still gives purpose. So I do appreciate the openness of the community here. And last but not least, the other thing is people didn't think I was crazy. I spoke at a gathering in November before I even moved here. And I started talking about the landscape of grant giving in the area and the way that funds are handed out. And I wasn't perceived as being off my rocker as I thought I was. You know, one of the foundations who I talked to was a gentleman who had a loose relationship with, and I leaned on him pretty hard at this workshop. But here we are. Well, that was what, 5-6 months ago, and he's even starting to talk about with his organization what it looks like to change the way that they give out funds. So, I mean, we all in this together. Sometimes we all just need a push in a direction. So as people push, I push again, and hopefully we start making enough momentum where we push into the same direction and really make headway.
Well, I have two more questions for you, and maybe if you have a question or something that maybe you have on your mind. But one of the questions is, you mentioned that quite often you go by George Floyd Square. There's something special about George Floyd Square to you in terms of there's a certain maybe pull. Can you say a little bit about that?
So I drive past there coming from work every day. I haven't learned any other routes, so I take the route till I get to Portland and come up Portland to 38th until I get over to Hiawatha. And I drive by there every day. And what has really drawn me more than the significance of the spot is the attention paid to it by people every day. I've never driven by there and there wasn't at least 10, 15 people out. A couple of weeks ago, last week, I believe, when it was hot, when it was like 88, it was like throngs of people. So what, for me, what that says is, this spot matters for more than just what happened. It's turning into, and I hope I'm not taking too many liberties in my thought with this, but it looks like it's turning into a place of hope for people and inspiration. And I want to be a part of that because, and I don't mean just in the literal sense of, leading the charge, but I need that to rebuild to replenish my soul sometimes. You need to see other people who actually want to see a better place. And I know a lot of it is kumbaya moments, but you can't knock those either because people need to find hope where they find hope. Because I really think that's what's missing now. So when I go by there and I see these little small symbols of hope, it gives me renewed purpose. And I also think when I was at the university, we had a group of religious sisters that came up from Central America. And the first thing they asked was to go to George Floyd Square. So we took them over there, me and another gentleman, we took them over there and they prayed and they sang and took pictures. And then that same group came back just before the Christmas break. And they went back and they took pictures and then they compared their pictures of the experience. And they were talking about how much they had grown about in what they do, how they had grown and how that experience helped them to start seeing others in a different light. I don't know if that was transformational for everybody, but for me, seeing others go through a similar feeling that I have. And then again, that's the reason why I drive that way every day. First of all, that was the first route I know. So I'm, kind of stick to what works. It's not broke, don't fix it. I go that way and I avoid all the potholes on 42nd Street, So it's really good on my car. It's good on traffic. And then if I'm really hungry, I can stop on Bloomington at Mama Sheila's and get something to eat if I don't feel like cooking and keep on going. So it serves multiple purposes, but I go that way and I'm drawn that way because I really do like to see people coming together in a place of hope and wanting to do something.
The other question that I have for you, and it has to do, it's kind of a intersection for everybody and come together, right? In terms of, and it's kind of, some of you kind of dream casting. You talk about an idea that you have about what you call it, a dignity center. Can you say some, what's that about?
So the dream is, so I'm a big dreamer. I believe if you don't dream big, you will never fall small. You got to dream big so you can get somewhere. So our approaches right now, I think, are hitting the wall. We're seeing a lot of pushback now. Just read an article, and actually I was at a foundation presentation the other day, and guy was talking about DEI fatigue. And I think this was done deliberately. You know, they inundate with so much where they know Americans have a short attention span for the most part on issues. And they know they keep drilling certain things, people are going to tune out. Plus, they got us running scared right now with so many things. You know, we're still recovering from COVID and the fear that was instilled from that. And we were still recovering from 9/11 before. I mean, we stay in a constant state of shock to the system. So a Dignity Institute, you know, I've been talking about it with Pastor Jen, and I'm going to talk about it with you more, is about bringing together different faith traditions and the things that we all kind of share a common belief on, and being able to teach from this perspective. I do think having God out of the equation has hindered a lot of the conversation. And there is a space to have this conversation as well. You know, we've taken God out of so many things, and I'm not going to get on that soapbox, but from my experience as a veteran, from my experience, for everything I dealt with afterwards, there is a place for God, and it does matter. So having conversations with people, professionals, students, about how God's design. I mean, they already talk about God in so many different ways without saying it. You know, our whole concept of morality and ethics stems from early religious communities. You know, we can talk about Kosa, Hammurabi, and we can talk about the everything else, but it all goes back to a belief in a higher power. And as a Christian, I'm called to be there, to be that light. So how can I actually start talking about making a change if I don't take it from the perspective that it was given to us? So when we start talking about the Dignity Institute, right now we're talking about several different things culminating. So talking about how faith traditions, because right now we have a few different faith traditions who are involved, Christian traditions. So talking about how human dignity is essential to any conversation on coming together. Talking about how recognizing our own emotions in this, or what we like to call emotional intelligence, how that plays into this. Having a cursory level of competence culturally, that's important, because we always assume as Americans and as certain parts of America that certain things are just common knowledge. You know, I think about my experience as an American going overseas. The first time we went overseas in the military, I went to Germany, and everybody said, oh, in Germany, everybody burps at the table. So what do? I go sit at the table and I burp in front of everybody. No, that's just American nonsense. I humiliated myself, but more importantly, I humiliated the people I sat with. You know, so having some level of cursory competence around it, coming from different parts of the country. I'm from Detroit. Some things we do in Detroit, you can't do here. Just like there's things here you can't do there. You know, so having a level of cultural competence goes beyond just the basic things we think about. You know, I think about my nephews. My nephew's on the autism spectrum. Nobody even talks about that, the accommodations he need as a diversity, equity, inclusion issue. But if you can solve the issue for his community, you can solve pretty much everything. But we take certain things out of the equation because it doesn't fit what we're used to. So this whole dignity concept is about how we properly serve and accompany people and help one another. You know, a lot of young people use the term mutual aid now. Well, mutual aid also is rooted in what? The concept of dignity. You know, we're trying to make sure our people in our community don't have to go without, they don't have to suffer, especially those who don't have means. And means isn't always monetary, you know. as a business person, we, usually talking about means has something around money, but means is everything. I don't have means of transportation. Yeah, that might equate to an economic challenge for me, but might just be I never got my license, but I still need to get around. So trying to find this space where we can actually start trying to see each other in a different light. And instead of just focusing on conversations, let's focus on taking that conversation one step further. That conversation has to happen in order for something, nothing happens without something being spoken. But then you have to actually walk it. And I think we leave a lot of this at the conversation point and don't take it to the next level. And until we start taking it there, we're wasting a lot of time and energy. So this Dignity Institute turns into an accompaniment partner. It turns into the concept of iron sharpening iron. I need to push some days because I don't know everything, don't profess to. Matter of fact, the older I get, the less I know. But, but I need somebody to sharpen me and I need to sharpen others. And that's how this is supposed to work. And again, like I said, last time I was on, I go back to the book of Acts when they talk about those early communities and how people gave deeply and shared. And I don't know, it's just something about that experience I know is real. I know it's real. I've seen it in a small scale in the military, and I hate to keep using that, but it's a shame in this day and age, the best model I have for a level playing field is to say the U.S. military. Just think about that for a minute. What does that say about everything else? If the most level playing field I've had has been in the military.
And now you're making me nervous. So Leon, thank you. This is a great jumping off point for people to transition into the breakout, to the breakout groups, and digest some of the wisdom that you have shared. And I know I've seen some comments already that the Dignity Center really resonates with people. So,
well, can I just share one thing before we break out?
Sure,
I'll be real brief.
Sure.
It's a second reason why this dignity piece is big to me. So 2011, 2012, come back from a deployment and I find myself not able to, my mom had a welcome home dinner, to be honest. And I just went on this whole tirade, just cussing up a storm. And it wasn't anything mean. It was complimentary to people. Oh, this food is so effing delicious. And you look so blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. So I went upstairs, put on my well, I'm an old soldier. I still call them battle dress uniform, but my combat uniform, an overcoat, and 2 weapons, and I left. And I stayed on the street for the better part of 11 months. Didn't come home. I didn't feel like the PTSD therapy I was getting at the VA was working. And when I came out of this fog, I was in a bathroom of a McDonald's over in Southwest Detroit under the bridge, almost on Springwells, washing up. And a little kid came in and he looked at me, I looked at him, and he ran off. So I said, oh my God, I'm about to go to jail. So I get dressed and I'm getting ready to leave, and his dad walks and blocks the door. And I'm like, I don't want any trouble. I didn't do anything to your kid. I'm sorry. He was like, nah. And he said, I see your uniform. He said, who'd you serve with? And I said, I don't want any issue. I'm still trying to not get in any confrontation. One thing leads to another. He was a Marine, and I didn't hold that against him. But I was like, you see my patch, it says 82nd Airborne. You see my combat patch, it says 2nd Infantry. I said, so, and he just told me, he said this to me, this is how I know God talks to you and comes to you when you need him most. And he said, it's going to be okay. And I don't know what he was talking about. All I wanted to do was get out this bathroom because I was too afraid to get flagged doing something with kids. I was nervous. And he just grabbed me and he took me to a church. Took me to this church, and to this day, I always laugh because the guy who answered the door, older white guy, and he was like, oh yeah, he saw my name, Dixon. He said, you didn't happen to go to school on 6 Mile Livernois? I said, yeah. He said, you used to date my daughter. And I said, sir, no, I didn't. And then, and not trying to, say anything, but I was sure I didn't, because the school I went to was all African-American. Wasn't even thinking. He told me who his daughter was. I just broke down in tears because I did go with his daughter. That was my crush growing up. But that softened my heart. He asked me if I wanted to stay because he had a food and clothes pantry. He asked me if I wanted to stay there. And I said, sure. So the next day he came in with a list of chores for me to do. And I did them. In the meantime, he found me some clothes to wear. And over this period of 3 weeks, he connected me with my parents again. And from there, I've just been excelling. But he saw past me being this guy on the street. The Marine saw past me being this random dude washing up in the bathroom. That's where dignity hits me at, you know, and you can hear it in my voice. I'm trying to keep them breaking down now, but they didn't have to do that. But they saw something in me that needed to be seen. And that was important to me. So it's important to me that I see that, or at least try to see that in everybody I come in contact with.
Oh. Thank you, Leon. And thanks for adding that last story. I think this is a wonderful time to transition into our breakouts. And there are prepared questions that we have. But I would add to those questions a question that Leon inspires. As you go into your breakouts, the question is, where do you find dignity? Where do you find your dignity? So as you go into the breakouts, introduce yourself to one another. Choose any of the questions, but I like the question about dignity. And then focus on listening well. I mean, listen not just with your ears, but listen with your heart. Listen from that inner part of you, and hear from each person in your group. And speak from your own experience. Speak with I statements. Really be centered, and come from that place of dignity. So the questions are, what's in tonight's reflection connects with you and your experience? What challenged you? And what are you curious about now? We'll have 20 minutes, and then we'll reconvene, and you'll be able to ask Leon some questions with our remaining time. So as we regather, are we regathered now? So yes, as we regather, invite you to reconnect. What did you hear in your small groups? And invite you to make comments in the chat, and Jen will help to identify you, and we will respond to what did you hear? What is human dignity to you? What is in tonight's reflection connected with your experience, and what challenged you? What are you curious about now? And I'll ask that one more time as we reconnect. What did you hear when you gathered in your small group conversation? What questions emerged from your group? What does human dignity mean to you? And invite you to raise your hand or put comments in the chat, and we will have opportunity to hear from you. And if you have questions for Leon, we've got about 15 minutes to kind of share some of the wealth from your small group. Yeah. If anyone wants to raise their hand and ask either Leon a question or share a comment from your small group, this would be a great time. I see from Steve, your group appreciated Leon's comment. Leon certainly acted with dignity in all of those situations. And what emerged from you in your conversations?
Steve says, our group really appreciated Leon's comment about human dignity. In other words, respecting each other before any interaction or discussion. Jesus would say, love one another. And above Steve comments, there's a comment from Don that says, how can we move beyond talk to relationships?
So one thing I suggest in that area is, what's the word we like to use nowadays? Intentionality. If we don't start making, it would be nice to think we all take the same message away from these conversations. So one of the things I did, in the past iteration, I would, at Mount St. Mary's, matter of fact, let's take it here more recently. At St. Mary's, we had the first semester where any university didn't have one Title IX complaint. First time in history. And they asked me, well, how'd you do it? I said, well, one, you got to remember it's a smaller school, but two, I forced every student the first month of school into a group with somebody else. I forced them to have meaningful conversations every day. And the way I forced them was by, incentivizing it. So you got a Target gift card if you document these conversations. And guess what? Students really like Target, evidently, because everybody went ahead and I had to come out of a nice piece of my budget for gift cards. But guess what? Some of the reports, I made them really write me real reports, not just bullet points. But they wanted to talk about it. They were like, well, can we make videos? I said, sure, because then if you don't mind me using them. And one of the ones that stood out the most was a young lady. She was from Stillwater, I believe it was, Minnesota. She said she had never been around any other person that didn't look like her. And she said, and even though she doesn't agree, she found out that the young lady she was partnered with was really nice, and they both liked the same kind of ramen noodles. That doesn't sound like much, but imagine somebody who's never been in contact with somebody else finding out that they can at least eat the same bad food and enjoy it together. To me, that was moving mountains. So what it also did, how did that relate to Title IX? So we also made these same groups had to have at least one member had to have at least, if it was two young ladies, had to have a man, and if no matter what the identity was, you had to have opposites in this group in some kind of way. And over again, more often than not, the young people did just what I believe, but nobody else believed. They found the good in each other. The rest of my cabinet was like, this will never work. They're going to end up hating each other worse. I said, no, they haven't been tainted as much as we have. It's going to have some positive effects. So when we had people who were feeling as though they were having an encounter that deserved Title IX conversation, first of all, they addressed their coaches. They went through the whole process of all the people who you relate this to. They already had written statements by the time it got to my office, because I was also Title IX compliance. And they had already tried to set up a conference where they could talk to the person who had impacted them. So when the NCAA came in and looked at what we were doing, they were amazed. So naturally, they're trying to ask the university, well, how did you get this to work? They don't even know. And I'd like to say I had the secret sauce, but it wasn't me. We're just doing what we're supposed to do and engage each other in conversation and be intentional. So you have to go across and ask the person a question. So to answer that question, be real. When you want to have these conversations, you got to be able to take them further. Imagine if those who are married, you're married and you have an argument with your spouse and you never go back and say, you know what, I might have overreacted, or I didn't appreciate. I mean, if you didn't go back, you guys just split up because of nothing. At some point in time, you have to people you care about, people you want to care about, people you want to have some kind of relationship with. You got to be vulnerable, be a little humble. So I think that's the answer. Making that extra step. We have a culture now that teaches us that you shouldn't. Everybody owes you something. Cut them out your life if they're stressing you. Cut them out. You don't need that. That's not true. My mom and dad used to stress me out when I was little, but I didn't cut my parents out. And I still don't to this day. That's the most exciting thing about me going to this. I have a board meeting I'm going to this weekend back in Detroit, but the most exciting part of it, I get to hang out with my mom and dad for a couple of days.
Eileen says, I feel I have dignity when people accept me for who I am And Jimbo says, the power of human dignity to prevent murder is addressed here. The author of the book says mass shootings are a form of suicide. Rather than focus on firearms, he suggests we focus on the kindness we can give each other and seeking help for those who are in despair.
I've read that. I agree with that.
And Terry shouts out, Pastor Kelly says, move at the speed of relationship.
Yeah, I'll also invite you to raise your hand if you'd like to ask Leon a question and make a comment. Or write something in the chat.
I think I see Lois with her hand up. Thanks, Lois. You can come off mute.
Hi, Leon. I just feel so moved by your discussion about the Dignity Center. And I just wonder if you would talk to us a little bit more about it. Just say a few more words in there. We had a really good conversation in our group just about the ways that failure of giving dignity is just so costly relationally and financially and communally. I'd just love to hear more.
So right now, like I said, we're still fleshing it out, but the intent is to get us past this finger pointing phase, you know, and again, don't take what I'm saying the wrong way, because there's a space for all of this. But right now, generally speaking, the way we approach these topics is we leave off when people are emotionally raw. Having these conversations, no matter who the audience is taxing on our spirit a lot of times, and we leave people emotionally raw. So part of it is giving people time to emotionally recover, but also give them a task, you know, and I hate to say it like that, but it is, you know, giving people a task where we come together and work and actually have to put those conversations into a practical application. So imagine, this is just a hypothetical, but imagine we have, you know, it's Thursday night and we've really touched a nerve with a couple of people about whatever topic. And we know on Saturday, though, we got to come back together and we're gonna do a neighborhood cleanup. And we're working in groups of twos or groups of threes. Well, guess what? Sooner or later, that conversation is going to come up as we spend the day. And as we rake and vent, we get to think through and we get to talk through. At least that's the intent, and I've seen it work. You know, I'm not saying that this is foolproof, but I've seen it work. You know, so I do think there's value in that. Plus, again, I go back to the military. When, you know, I'm out in the middle of the desert, middle of wherever you at, and usually it's a squad of people who've never been around each other before in some shape or form. Nothing in common other than we all signed up to do this ridiculous job in the infantry. But the conversations are so raw and so, you know, and it has nothing to do, I mean, it probably does have something to do with the proximity to death, but it also has to do with human curiosity. We're forced to have these conversations because there's nobody else around. And I think if we get to a place where we can actually put these conversations into a context where we have to act upon them, we have to go back. It's so easy. I tell people all the time, you know, you can take your toys and leave the sandbox today. Just come back with the toys tomorrow. That's all I ask. Bring your toys back. We can fight again. You can take them back home. Sooner or later, you're going to leave one of them with me, though.
Thank you.
Carol says, Leon's approach to those he encountered in difficult situations affirms for me that we experience dignity by affirming the dignity of others. And Cheryl says, towards the end of our conversation, we talked about dignity as the fruits of loving kindness and compassion. In other words, when we practice loving kindness and compassion towards others, we are not just being kind, we're actually seeing their worthiness, which is their dignity.
And one thing I will say, I haven't heard from this group, and I've really loved this, is that usually when I start talking about dignity, people want to use dignity and respect interchangeably.
Mm.
And they're really not.
Mm.
So I love the fact where you guys are taking this. I love that, because this is where I'm trying to go with it as I move forward.
Leon, can you say something about how they're different?
So if we go back to the foundations of so word usage is very, very important to the work I've done in my life. So dignity is God-given. Respect is man-given. Respect is frequently referred to as something you earn. I don't have to earn dignity. God bestowed dignity into me at birth. I'm a creation of the Most High, and I'm creating in his likeness. And I'm using his in the pejorative. I don't mean it in a certain way, but I'm created in the image and likeness. So just by birth, the Ruach breath of life was put in all of us. So there's a common place there. It's a guy who runs this organization called Heterodox Institute in New York. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with him, but he's leading this conversation on dignity and character. So right now, there are people trying to connect those two dots. And I do think they connect, but not linearly. I think they go down the line. But anyway, he says the difference between dignity and respect is broken down with an example from like whoever you can think of as the most heinous person in history, whether it's Adolf Hitler, Muammar Gaddafi. He uses Al Capone a lot for some reason, and I wouldn't put Al Capone in those same categories. I mean, he might have been a criminal and bad, but I don't put him in that rarefied era, just bad, evil people. But anyway, what he was saying is, Al Capone was born with dignity, but he lost the respect of the people by doing what he did criminally. So I sometimes refer to that because it's easier for people to grasp, but respect is usually something we put on the scale of being, you work towards, and you can lose, but you can also regain. Dignity is never in question until you just destroy it. Yes, sister.
I am I'm just amazed at you, Leon, and your whole attitude toward life is, the glass half full, it seems to me. But I'm also picking up a sense of humor that you probably, exude when you're in most life situations, and maybe even difficult ones. Is that true?
Very true. I get accused of being a clown. I don't know if they mean a joking clown or a literal clown, but yeah, I get that a lot. My daughters always talk about my sense of humor, but that's my coping mechanism.
It's helpful in many situations.
Well, again, my dad, who's the master of all wisdom for me, my dad always says you can get more people with a joke than you can with harsh. He always believed in cracking a joke here and there. Matter of fact, my dad to this day tells some of the funniest stories ever. He's 89 years old and he's still the life of the party.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this might be the appropriate time to transition as we look toward next month, unless there's one quick question or comment that anyone has. Or Leon, do you have a final statement or anything you would like to do?
Briefly, I would just like to say, first of all, thank you all for allowing me not to come just once, but twice. I really appreciate that. Two, if you're ever in the neighborhood or you're looking for an opportunity to serve, RCFL is looking for help for anything, honestly, right now. So I would welcome anybody at any time to stop through, call me. If I can be of any assistance, any resource or anything, let me know. I'm at that point in my life, my daughters are older. They don't need dad as much. So I have nothing but time on my hand. And being a new guy here in Minneapolis, haven't found anything to get into yet. So anything I can help with, please do not hesitate.
How can we reach you by telephone?
313-304-3193. I'll be out of range daytime from now until Wednesday because I'm on the board of directors of an organization in Detroit called Acts 29. And we have our board meeting this week, but I'll be back Wednesday evening. I'll be accessible by phone in the evening if you can wait that long, but otherwise I'm here full time again come Wednesday night, 313-304-3193. And if you can't remember, I'm sure Pastor Kelly, y'all know how to get in touch with him. He'll give it to you. Yeah, there you go.
Get that phone number, sir.
Well, thank you all again for a wonderful come together. And there are a couple of events staff when
Yeah, you're all invited. We're having a big block party coming up this Sunday, and it's going to be hosted actually at Redeemer and the Minneapolis Central Church of Christ. This is a partnership with Vocal Essence. So there's going to be 3 amazing choirs. And before that, there's great food. There's catered food. There's going to be different interactive experiences and storytelling and dance and community. So having the time to build relationship together. That's this Sunday, starting at 4 till 6. And then coming up in May, on Saturday, May 6th, there is a powwow called Many Faces, Many Students. This is happening up in White Bear Lake. And it opens at 11 at the Sunrise Park Middle School. And the grand entry is at 1 o'clock. There's a link in the chat about this event. And there's also a hosted learning session at the end of April. I think it's April 24th, but take a look at that link to learn more about powwows and to build some knowledge before joining in the community event.
Well, again, thank you all. We'll look forward to next month, May 18th, for our come together, and we'll be sending out more information. I'll also be looking forward to, we're planning for a regular newsletter and information as we're planning regular events throughout the year. And so we're excited about that. And hopefully we'll see some of you between now and May 18th. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bless you.